corpse? That's the real treasure.
Just me and you, Dark Souls. Dark Souls 1! Truly the pinnacle of gaming when it comes to the first Dark Souls game. Dark Souls 1 is the second installment in Bandai Namco's Souls series, following Demon Souls' release in 2009. Dark Souls 1 was originally released on September 22nd, 2011 for PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. The game was met with positive reviews, with Metacritic ranking it in 89. Players were a little divided, however, with some saying it was too boring or too hard, and others saying it was one of the greatest RPGs ever made. However, over the years, the game has left a bittersweet taste in my mouth. I typically like the Dark Souls games, at least I thought I did. Recently, while replaying the first game, it's like my old nostalgia and memories of it were a little jumbled up. Don't get me wrong, it's a good game. There are just more noticeable flaws that I've spotted while replaying it. I guess the blinding innocence of childhood would put rose-tinted glasses on me. That is bound to happen. My original playthrough where I fully beat the game was when I played it through with a friend. We fought everything together, and the company kept the game entertaining. Playing it through completely solo this time, no summons at all, does make the game a little bleaker. Although the little glimmer originally playing the game is gone, it is still a perfectly fine game. For 2011, it's okay. Keep in mind, however, that I am playing Dark Souls Remastered here. That is a version of the game that released in 2018, with minor adjustments to things I don't really care about. With the absolute gaming legends that released in 2011, such as Elder Scrolls V, Skyrim, Terraria, as well as the original release date for Minecraft, even the remastered game leaves things to be desired. The Dark Souls series revolves around fire, and it sure does light a spark of masochism in people. This game does not let up, and that is exactly why millions of people love it. This series forces people to overcome such hard challenges, and that is why I think people come back to it. That feeling of overcoming challenges, the feeling of not giving up and accomplishing something which you once thought was impossible. The Dark Souls series gives players a feeling of victory, and that is what keeps millions of players engaged and enjoying the games. Whether it finally be defeating a boss that's been handing your ass back to you for an hour straight, or finally killing the invader you've been having a standoff with for the past 5 minutes. A combination of adrenaline, anger, and complete overwhelming relief. That feeling is a drug for us Soulsborne players. The graphics can be a little lacking sometimes, and even with how cool some of the bosses are, the areas surrounding them can be lackluster. Most of the locations in the games are total coin flips. The bright orange and red horror brought upon your eyes when entering Demon Ruins is a little jarring when coming from a calming green grassy area like Darkroot. It's so odd. You can have fantastically designed areas with annoying enemies such as the catacombs. You can have abysmal areas where you're always taking damage because of the ground or a passive effect, such as Blight Town or Lost Izalith. But when you get fun enemies, cool environments, and a butt ton of lore that keeps you interested, you get true gems that most of the fans will always remember. These are rare, but I believe I speak for everyone when I say we all remember Anor Londo. The stunning view, the bold, beautiful colors, the overwhelming feeling of glory and honor the area has. I must give Anor Londo its own segment of the video if I want to do it justice, and I will talk a little bit more about the other locations I've mentioned as well. The combat in Dark Souls is the main focus of the game. It is what provides the feeling of victory. The bosses are fun and challenging, and an encounter with an enemy has the potential to feel deadly as well. Going back to Dark Souls 1, it feels clunky. It's a little rough, all things considered. The weapons are not as balanced as one would hope, and strength builds seem to be the most optional. Going through the game as a strength build in my first playthrough, and now going through it as a sorcery dex build, I can tell the game got harder. Despite all the types of builds and ways you can play the game, I suppose it is impossible for some not to overshadow the others. No matter the enemy, the area, or the item, Dark Souls will always pack it full of lore. The lore in the Souls series spans far and wide, and there is always something new to discover. I don't think I could go in depth on some of what they do here, but they did write 3 sentences for a pile of poopy you can throw. It is extensive and a little exhausting, so I will leave a link in the description to a video explaining the more in-detail aspects of it. The Dark Souls community is relatively active and pretty cool. The creativity that some players have is astounding, and in-game cosplays and character ideas that people produce are proof of that. Some will replicate characters from popular media, like the Joker or Darth Vader. Other crazies even attempt to fight people they invade as the exact copy of that character, equipment and all. Dark Souls 1 can be played both online and offline. When played online, you can summon friendly players to help you through an area. The downside to this is that you are also able to be invaded by players. The player's main goal when invading is to kill the host of Embers using whatever means they would like. If the host dies, they will succeed in their goal. However, the player versus player combat in Dark Souls 1 is not fun. The main locations you should frequently attend if you want to invade/be invaded are Anor Londo and Ulasil Township. I really recommend playing offline in these areas, unless a boss is giving you a lot of trouble and you have a friend to help you out. The PvP in Dark Souls 1 consists of the same broken pyromancies and sorceries being repeated over and over and over again, or getting twinked and ganked by someone with a dexterity build. But if you're lucky, you might even get your save hacked and corrupted. The other Soulsborne games have more enjoyable PvP scenes, and for PvP, I recommend them more. Some areas I really enjoyed, besides Anor Londo, were the catacombs and all of Darkroom. I really like the color and the feeling of Darkroom. The greenery can hide enemies, and the whole forest feels alive. The enemies feel straight out of a haunted rainforest, with danger hiding around every corner. I'm going to blame the power outage I had on this area, though, for no other reason than pettiness. I like the catacombs as well. The bottom half is a little iffy, with the bullshit bone wheels everywhere. That is simply one small level of this huge expanse of carved tunnels and traps. Exploring the area gives you a feeling of a treasure hunter exploring this underground abyss of history. Very Indiana Jonesy. Ironically, the catacombs seem to be one of the areas that has the most life in it. The enemies are a little annoying, but I enjoy the mechanic of having to kill one main enemy to stop the others from respawning. I also like that you meet Patches in the area afterwards, implying his sneaky nature. He had to have been able to escort the Thorolins somehow, right? Anor Londo is easily one of the most beautiful areas in all of gaming history. The Golden Sun and the Marble Towers form this massive, gorgeous city of the gods. In the lore, Anor Londo is the city where Gwyn and his knights lived, along with many of Lordran's most powerful and loyal subjects. After Lord Gwyn had left for the Kiln of the First Flame, his children, Gwynevere and Gwyndolin, were left to look after the great city. In the crumbling age of fire, Gwyndolin uses illusory magic to keep up the beautiful city of Anor Londo. If you attack Gwynevere of Gargantuan Globes, it is revealed that she is merely an illusion to the player, and the sunlight and golden glow of the city fades into a dark night. You can fight Gwyndolin or spare him. Either way, the Golden City will not return to glory, but rather crumble further when you see it into Dark Souls 3. The main boss of Anor Londo is the most fun in the game, possibly the only duo boss in the entire series that is done well. Your next opponents are Dragonslayer Ornstein and Executioner Smough. Ornstein and Smough guard Gwynevere, and thus the Lord Vessel from the Chosen Undead. You must defeat them to get into the final act of the game, where you gather the Lord Souls. ONS combine a heavy slow tank with a fast dexterous spear wielder. They are a challenging encounter with an incredible moveset and a devastatingly beautiful soundtrack to match. The madness of Smough and the heroic bravery of Ornstein combine into an amazing track. Many bosses in Dark Souls 1 are there to challenge you and ask a question. The Asylum Demon is the first boss of the game. It asks you if you can beat your very first Souls boss. The Bell Gargoyles asked if you learned how important weapon upgrading was, and if you had to use it to the peak of its ability. But Ornstein and Smough ask you something much more important. Can you take everything you've learned and earn your spot as the chosen undead? After beating these two beefy bros, you earn one whole congratulations. You are now halfway through the game, and for me, this is where the game starts to decline in quality. It isn't significant, but it is noticeable. For the rest of the game, I was riding a high granted by Anor Londo in the DLC, which I haven't talked about just yet. The DLC for Dark Souls 1, Artorias of the Abyss, is quite a good package of bosses, areas, and especially lore. In this DLC, you are taken back in time to a town called Oolacile, once occupied the area of Farron Woods. The whole DLC is expertly designed, and I'd like to give it its own video eventually. The main reason I bring it up is the bosses. Black Dragon Kalameet, Artorias, and the Father of the Abyss himself all make incredible boss fights that really elevate the entire section of the DLC, in some cases above the base game. Tangent over on DLC. After you defeat Ornstein and Smough, you get to meet Gwyn's daughter, Guinevere, face to face. Well, face to chest, mostly. She gives you the Lord Vessel, a powerful artifact designed to hold the souls of the four supreme beings around Lordran. These souls belong to Seath the Scaleless, the Bed of Chaos, Gravelord Nito, and the four kings of New Londo. Then, it's a quest for murder. None of these bosses or areas they reside in are particularly mentionable, other than the Bed of Chaos is a dumb gimmick with bad design. But if you know anything about the Souls series, you've heard that complaint already. Once all four souls are collected and placed in the Lord Vessel, the Kiln of the First Flame opens. This is the permanent arena of Gwyn, who fights to keep the flame alive, thus extending the Age of Fire. The Kiln of the First Flame is an area covered in the ashes of a fallen kingdom, and Gwyn's last hope is you. You must slay him, and free him of the prison he designed for himself. Once the deed is done, a choice is presented to you. Do you continue the Age of Fire by sacrificing yourself and taking Gwyn's spot, kindling the flame for eternity? Or do you walk out of the room without offering yourself to the flame, allowing an age of darkness to fall upon Lordran, saving yourself and ultimately the kingdom? The choice is yours, as every other one you've made so far, but this is not a choice you could take back, as choosing either ends the game. The file will always reset to before you beat Gwyn, unless you choose to New Game Plus it. The futility of the choice to save the kingdom of Lordran is how I've been feeling about things in general lately. Futile. Pointless. But the truth is, we all have a path forward. It just takes some people longer to find it, but I think that makes it all the more worth it when we get there, doesn't it? Thank you for watching. And good night.